to...
Fuck off!
Or not to?
Fuck off!
That is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of
Snakes and fucking morons!
or to take arms against a sea of
Bleeding Heart, United Nations, Volvo, gender bender horseshit.
and by opposing
Gobbledygook, fuck yourself.
succession battles, revenge, power, comedy, tragedy. Many people have pointed out the similarities between Succession and Shakespeare's plays. But has anybody made a pseudo-intellectual video essay about it yet? No, fear not, because me and my 2-1 are here to help.
Buckle up, fucklehead.
But first, you have to like this video and subscribe to my channel, okay? Look.
I suck at the whole, like, corporate flirt thing. I like to lube up and fuck.
So just do it, alright? Have you done it yet? Okay, good. Let's get into it. Shiv gives off kind of girl bossified Lady Macbeth vibes. Kendall
Oh, here he comes, the attention whore.
is a whiny guy with daddy issues, a classic Hamlet. And of course, Tom and Greg,
Trying to seduce me, Tom?
Yes, I am.
Romeo and Juliet. But if Succession is giving any Shakespeare play the most, it's giving King Lear. Come not between the dragon and his wrath, lest he go
Full fucking beast!
In King Lear himself is getting on a bit, so he decides to divide his kingdom between his 3 daughters, who are all varying degrees of fierce and slay. He does this according to a kind of love test, where whoever doth suck up to him the most doth receive the biggest bounty. King Lear also has a little court jester fool sidekick who constantly makes moronic jokes, often one that predicts the rest of the season.
And the only way he'll respect you is if you try to destroy him.
You want me to hit a kid? Kendall will self-destruct because it's his favorite. Chop him into a million pieces and toss him in the Hudson.
I'm blown into a million pieces.
I'm dumb, but I'm smart.
I guess jesters do oft prove prophets.
Just because I like a joke doesn't mean I'm a fucking clown.
That said, it's not even the characters that really make Succession and King Lear so similar. It's more that both texts are obsessively interested in exploring the intricate link between language and power.
Fucking words. Fucking words.
In Shakespeare, your way with words tends to be correlated with the amount of power that you have. High status characters in Shakespeare tend to speak dead nice. Look, I'm sorry to trigger anyone, but this is a video about Shakespeare, so at some point we were gonna have to mention the iambic pentameter. You know, the whole da-dun, 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 10 syllables or 5 feet per line thing that your English teacher used to bang on about while you were stuck in one of those mobile classrooms, fantasizing about plucking out your own eyes, Duke of Gloucester style. At the very beginning of the play, King Lear's still very powerful, and he says things like, "That future strife may be prevented now, which one of you doth say shall love us most." Trust me, I've got my shit together, lads, and you can tell that from the way I sound. But these rules aren't set in stone for each character. As the level of power that different Shakespearean characters have fluctuates because of the plot, the way that those characters speak often fluctuates accordingly. Here he is later in the play. "Let me be not mad, sweet heaven, keep me in temper. I would not be mad." So it's a big vibe in Shakespeare that if you don't have any power over your language, then you don't have any power at all. And this is why people in Succession, who are all really powerful characters, speak so adeptly. Even the insults are poetry.
We talking to each other on the poop deck of a majestic schooner?
That's about as choreographed as a dog getting fucked on roller skates. Sandy and Stewie have got my nuts in a vice. But Frank, you've got the grease to slip them out.
But Frank, you've got the grease to slip them out. It's iambic pentameter, lads. But just as King Lear loses his temper as he loses his tempo, every now and then in Succession, Logan loses a bit of power, and whenever he loses power, it's because he started chatting shit.
What?
In a world where everything hinges on what Logan says, as soon as we think that he doesn't know what he's talking about, the whole world of Succession goes into immediate chaos. Usually, what causes these bouts of inarticulacy in both King Lear and King Logan are exactly the same thing. It's to do with their physical incapacity as aging men. And in both texts, there sure is a lot of physical incapacity.
I need a piss. I think I might need a piss. I need a piss.
Why don't we just, like, take a big old piss?
Are you bored of the iambic pentameter? Same. let's talk about the piss.
It's just my body.
So the plot of King Lear is basically us watching the King of England as he goes slowly mad because of old age and thankless children. At one point, when he goes really nut, he starts walking around semi-naked on a heath. When one of his old subordinates, the Earl of Gloucester, finds Lear in this state, he begs to kiss his king's hand, to which Lear replies, "Let me wipe it first. It smells of mortality." Gross.
Ah, how the mighty are fallen.
He was a king once, now look at him, eating shit.
But why would Shakespeare write a play about the King of England cacking himself? I hear nobody ask. Well, I'll answer you. I'll answer me. Back in Shakespeare's day, the human body was often used as a metaphor for an entire kingdom. Lear's kingdom is being hacked to pieces by his kids, and it's slowly getting more and more corrupted. Whenever Lear is badly sick, his physical decline mirrors the decline of his entire empire.
Losing even a 0.25% of my operating capacity, that has $1 million implications.
I get the shits, we're fucked.
When Shakespeare dropped King Lear in 1606, it was all kicking off. It was the turn of the century, Queen Elizabeth had just died, not that one. Given the new King James was not a direct heir, there was increased anxiety about the unification of England and Scotland. Basically, a lot of the old systems of power were being called into question. Imagine you're a scummy little peasant back in Shakespeare's day, right? You would literally know jack shit about fuck like you couldn't even read, and you live under feudalism, which is a belief that says that the most powerful people in the kingdom are literally put there by divine right. But then you go and see a play about a king who is put through all of the possible human sufferings anyone could be exposed to, including watching his own daughter die and shitting himself on a heath. At the time, it probably would have given you a lot to think about regarding the hierarchies that you were living under, especially when the people on top of those hierarchies couldn't even wipe their own arse. It's some pretty big dick energy from old Bill that his first play out after Lizzie died was all about a bitter succession battle in a royal family, especially given that the new King James VI was a patron of Shakespeare and the King's Men, and so was almost definitely in the audience for King Lear. I mean, no wonder no one funds the arts.
My Patreon's in the description.
Fast forwarding to Succession, if capitalism as it functions today was a person, it would be Logan Roy. Old, greedy, egotistical, white, Logan Roy is truly current society's daddy. But in Succession, daddy's starting to drop the ball. He's blowing chunks and pissing everywhere.
Oh, Jesus fuck.
Our company is a declining empire inside a declining empire.
And Logan constantly pissing away represents the structure of old media that is slowly starting to piss away its own legacy as its relevance wanes and it gets confronted by big tech.
We're losing to monopolistic disruptors. Alphabet, Facebook.
Internet, fucking game changer, man.
That's right, the internet.
It's just the same as Lear's illnesses representing the decline of England.
The demented fucking piss-mad King of England?
But of course it's more than just a metaphor that in Succession and King Lear, power is concentrated so heavily in the hands of the few. It literally do be like that sometimes. Succession reminds us that while we might not have a literal king ruling over us anymore, oh no wait, we are still essentially ruled over by quite a few family dynasties. I mean, you don't have to have the backing of Rupert Murdoch to become the next Prime Minister of the UK, but it probably helps.
I guess I just feel like you maybe get a bigger vote in here.
But this is about more than the Murdochs. Jesse Armstrong has mentioned many media family dynasties that inspired Succession. The Maxwells, the Trumps, the Carnegies, the Mercers, the Sinclairs, the Redstones. All these families wield an unbelievable amount of power over the current society we live in. These guys, along with your modern tech leaders, your Bezoses, your Zuckerbergs, your Musks, these guys are essentially the modern monarchs of the day. These are unelected leaders who in many cases are more rich and more powerful through their companies than some entire countries. The only difference between old royal empires and these companies is where old royal empires sought to colonize land, these companies seek to colonize our attention.
What we're fighting for is eyeballs.
Yep, it's another video essay about late capitalism.
As reified in the architecture of corporate America.
Amen, brother.
Unsubscribe.
Depending on your politics, you might glamorize the super rich or demonize the super rich. If you're anything like me, and you're being honest, you probably do a little bit of both.
You have a hard time finding a happy medium between worshipping him and wanting to kill him. Huh.
Whichever camp you fall on, you're engaging in a form of dehumanization. It's a lot easier for us to compute all of the bad stuff that's happening in the world if we're able to demonize the main culprits behind it by labeling them baddies, because distancing someone from their humanity means that we're distancing them from ourselves, and the hard truth that our species is capable of doing a lot of terrible stuff.
Incidents like theft, sexual assault, rape, Murder.
Okay, the bad ones.
But glorification is also a form of dehumanization. We often forget that because boo-hoo, the rich are being glorified, you know? And because it's a form of dehumanization that rich people tend to cultivate actively within themselves because it brings them power. And power helps you conceal your human flaws. Through tattered gowns, small vices do appear. Robes and furred gowns hide all.
Here's the thing about being rich. It's fucking great. It's like being a superhero, only better. You get to do what you want, the authorities can't really touch you, you get to wear a costume, but it's designed by Armani.
It's very good optics for Logan Roy to be seen as infallible. You're less likely to try and rebel against someone that you think is infallible. Your godlike status also makes it easier for you to turn on the other extreme of the scale and dehumanize the people below you.
It's good to demonize the enemy before you have to... It's good to demonize him before you have to kill his ass.
If you believe you're superior,
I'm 100 feet tall.
it's a lot easier to treat other people as inferior.
These people are pygmies.
Or even as less than human.
You are a fucking nobody.
You may even label them NRPI.
No real person involved.
But just like King Lear, Succession shows us that people like the Roys, at the end of the day, are not monsters or gods. Just like King Lear is some guy, Logan is just some guy. I mean, Logan can back a fascist presidential candidate, but he's still the guy who asked Greg to go and get him one of Logan's cardigans so he could smell it for comfort when Logan was in the ICU. Kendall does his best to come across as anti-fragile, but he's clearly very sad. He's so sad throughout so much of the series that somebody made an Instagram called Kendall Roy Looking Sad. As for Logan, he can stack up as many billions as he wants, but he can't escape his aging body. He can't escape death. Kings, tyrants, CEOs, people who are good at computers, at the end of the day, we're all gonna die. And when a man dies, it is sad. Everyone in Succession is broken and wonky on the inside, even if they wear Prada suits on the outside.
Underneath, we're all just little nudie turtles.
However, all that's not to say that this show goes easy on this particular class of people. It may feel odd to assert that you can humanize someone whilst also not going easy on them. To humanize is to refuse to demonize, and in many ways, why shouldn't we demonize these super rich silver spoon assholes, right? But Jesse Armstrong is far cleverer than I. Succession understands that to dehumanize the rich because of all the evil things that they do would be just recycling the same dehumanization that the rich engage in order to become capable of doing all of those awful things. To humanize the Roys is therefore revolutionary because to humanize is also to refuse to glorify, and therefore to refuse to go along with the Roys' ideology of themselves as superhuman. It refuses to present them in the way that they would want to be presented. If the characters in Succession were able to watch Succession, they would think it's very bad optics. This is a show about a class of people who are obsessed with their own image, and with their own image being perfectly curated to the public, and it opens with the most powerful man in the show pissing on the floor. In today's money, that's as shocking as King Lear being reduced to a beggar stuck on a heath. Being forced to sit with the humanity of these people who are capable of such atrocity makes for a compelling mixture of both sympathy and disgust.
I think too much edible gold hurt my tummy.
And you end up feeling sorry for them, even though they're all capable of this horrible stuff, even though they're all completely compromised. I mean, Ken literally killed a guy. Ken crashed his car into the bridge. Ken don't care. Ken loves it. But of course, Ken does care. Ken doesn't love it. It literally tears him apart. Instead of this binary way that we usually view the super rich as either demons or gods, when you watch Succession, you're able to do both and to do neither. You're able to hate the Roys and feel sorry for them at the same time. To look at the Roys with sympathy and disgust completely undermines the power structure that they sit atop of. It completely undermines the image of infallibility that they try and promote to preserve their own power. There's a delicious moment in the second season where you get to watch a biographer trying to get close to the Roy family. She gets completely stonewalled.
The biography.
I told you to stop it.
There'll be no cooperation, but...
I don't want it to come out.
The Roys don't want some outsider getting to see them at their most intimate and most personal. But yet here we are, as viewers of Succession, watching them at their most intimate and their most personal.
Open the kimono.
You get to follow them into every private jet and every children's bedroom as they dream up their nasty little schemes or break down at their birthdays. By watching Succession, We get access to people like the Roys that people like the biographer could only ever dream of.
Sort of like a Curse of the Roys deep dive.
You're watching the Curse of the Roys deep dive. It speaks to how unlikely it is that we would ever be able to see a proper unfiltered version of any of the real people that Succession is based off, and how powerfully such people are able to control their own image in the media. Instead of only seeing the clinical, perfect, hyper-curated corporate jargon narrative of the rich that the rich want us to see, which is often the only way that scum like you or me would ever be able to get to see the rich, in Succession you get to watch the rich as they flounder to construct this very narrative that they want us to see. Only we get to watch the floundering, not just the narrative.
The message, I think, is a family reunited in the desert.
It carries that constant underlying tension between its characters obsessing over how they want to be seen, from the Battery to the top of Manhattan, and us getting to see them as they really are.
Brownstones, water towers, trees, skyscrapers, prize fighters and Wall Street traders.
I think there's an element of this in King Lear too. I think King Lear wouldn't himself as a character want everyone to know that he was cacking himself on a heath. How did I get onto this tangent of talking about shit? Let's get back to the Roys talking shit.
Big words. Good words.
One of the best examples of any of the Roys chatting shit is, of course, Connor at Mo Lester's funeral.
When a man dies, it is sad. All of us will die one day. In this case, it is Lester who has done so.
Interesting point, to which I would add, Connor Roy was interested in politics from a very young age.
Connor sounds like an idiot here, obviously, but it's also quite a cunning move of self-preservation. It means that pesky biographer won't get anything juicy from him. This scene is a perfect distillation of that thing where powerful people can't say the truth, but they can't say nothing, so they're caught in this trap of having to say something that means nothing. It's a tactic you'd recognise in many politicians, and it speaks to how constipated the channels of public discourse have become.
She's been working in politics for 10 years, so don't hold out for a straight answer.
But of course, keeping this up requires you to create your whole own language of bullshit, and thus, jargon is born.
I need the full fiber optic clear channel shit.
It's just an administrative action function.
Just feed me the metadata.
Look at that guy not being allowed to leave a hotel. That's an administrative action function.
What does that mean?
It's the sort of thing you say, isn't it?
We're here for you. We're here for you.
They loved you in the room. I'm not sure our visions aligned. They loved you in the room.
Will you stop telling me they love me in the fucking room, Frank?
From global to hyperlocal.
Are you all right?
I perform a variety of target-oriented incentives,
tasks
to enhance optimal performance.
That's just gibberish.
You can speak to us normally.
So I shall.
Enough of that, and back to the session. Family ownership and corporate continuity in the digital age.
Whatever the fuck that means.
It's a rich gumbo of ideas and buzzwords. That doesn't even mean anything.
It's all made up.
It's good because it's not clear exactly what the hell it means. So, lots of wiggle room.
Jargon's ubiquity is a measure of the extent to which we are being lied to and conned all the time. It's the language of bad faith, of people without conscience who, if they ever suffered shame, have long forgotten what it felt like.
We don't get embarrassed.
She does coach professional liars for a living.
It's called a lie, Jim. When you say the thing that's a lie.
But why are we being lied to all the time? Why is lying such a normalised part of the way that powerful people communicate? Well, to know that, we need to go back to the start of King Lear. The first thing Lear does in the play is divide his kingdom between his daughters, based not on who doth love him the most, but on who doth can make it sound like they love him the most. Confirmed, Lear's love language is words of affirmation. So, saying the right words immediately becomes a prerequisite to gaining power, and this is where the problems start. One of his daughters, Cordelia, refuses to play this game of who can be the biggest bumlicker. She refuses to live on these terms or by these rules and takes a stance against it from the beginning. She rejects the diktat to suck up to her dad with what she calls that glib and oily art to speak but purpose not. Actually, by doing this, Cordelia helps create a safe space where the family can come together and go through the emotional labour of dealing with generational trauma. And they find that the truth sets them free. Only joking, Lear cuts her out the will and then she dies. Spoilers! We need a spoiler warning for King Lear. You've had 400 years to read it, so pull your finger out. According to Mark Thompson, the author of What's Gone Wrong with the Language of Politics, the best modern equivalent we have to what Cordelia is talking about here is empty rhetoric. Empty rhetoric is sweet talk, a crooked pack of verbal tricks, which allows a shyster to turn a weak case into a strong one. The issue of speaking but purposing not is that it creates a deliberate separation between language and reality. I think one thing that makes Logan appealing in Succession is that he sometimes appears to be able to cut through all of the corporate jargony rhetoric that everyone has around him. In a world obsessed with optics and self-image, where everybody's power is linked to their ability to know what to say, when to say it, and who to say it to, it does feel quite refreshing to have a character who's basically constantly telling people to fuck off! Logan and his news channel ATN have built up this reputation for themselves as deliverers of straight talk. But this is Populism 101, lads. Logan's no bullshit approach is still bullshit. It's just a different flavour of bullshit. You know, before Trump's election, a 2015 Fox News poll found that 44% of sample US voters and 62% of Republicans agreed with the statement that Donald Trump tells it like it is, and that's what we need right now in a president. A guy who will have nothing to do with the conventional language of politics. But of course, as soon as Trump got into office, he failed to deliver on any of the promises he made, just like any other regular politician. And he incited an insurrection. So random. That Trump's rhetoric was able to punch through was, to me, not so much about Trump's strength as an orator. It was perhaps more about the feeling that there was something that needed to be punched through, i.e. the condescending tangle of bullshit that is modern public discourse, where politicians are lying, and we know they're lying, and they know that we know that they're lying, and everyone's just lying all the time. And again, this is one of the reasons why I think Succession hits so hard, because we all know we're being lied to. So it's very refreshing to see the messy truth behind the construction of these lies, or at least in Logan's case, to see the obvious contradictions between what he says to different people. Logan constantly cuts through jargon by telling people to fuck off, but telling people to fuck off is not the same thing as telling the truth. As with Trump, you don't need to be telling the truth to cut through lies, you just need to be telling a different flavour of lie. Logan isn't pursuing truth by telling people to fuck off all the time, he's pursuing his own power. He isn't trying to protect virtue, he's trying to protect himself. He's always manipulating, influencing, controlling the narrative.
Control the narrative, you probably yell that when you come.
There's an interesting moment where Logan gives a speech to the Pierce family, whose media conglomerate he wants to buy. To begin this speech, Logan, master of rhetoric and controlling the narrative, says,
I ain't no master of the speechifying.
And then he goes on to praise the Pierce's journalistic reputation, which he's never really been shown to care about too much before. But of course it isn't a real random flash of modesty, it's a rhetorical strategy that dates back as far as Shakespeare. It's very similar to Mark Antony addressing Rome in Julius Caesar when he says, I am no orator, as Brutus is, but as you know me all, a plain, blunt man. I have neither wit, nor words, nor worth, action, nor utterance, nor the power of speech to stir men's blood. I only speak right on. I tell you that which yourselves do know. Here, Mark Antony starts by doing down his own rhetorical ability, but then pulls out of the bag one of the most cunning rhetorical tactics in all of English literature, anti-rhetoric rhetoric. It's not for me to tell you to rebel against Rome, but if I was a better speaker or a cleverer man, then that's what I'd do. And then the people rebel against Rome. Logan is pulling exactly the same trick with the Pierces. He knows that if he confirms the belief that they have of him as a monster, then he'll never win control of their company, so he has to sprinkle in a little bit of modest self-deprecation to get them on side. It's a testament to the fact that if it gets him what he wants, Logan will literally say anything. Equally, if it's not going to get him what he wants, if it brings him no advantage, then he won't say it. I do believe that Logan did love his kids in his own distorted, abusive way, but he's certainly not going to tell them that he loves them unless it'll get him something that he wants. Logan understands the world as a battle or a game. Business is a game and language is a game, and this is what drives the heart of the show.
What you kids do not understand, it's all part of the game.
Succession is all about different games that people play with language.
Come on, everybody. It's a rootin' tootin' super fucking fun game for all the family.
These games are very complex and the rules are ever changing. And the key to the level of power you'll have is linked to your ability to recognise the language game being played and to play along accordingly. Just like when King Lear asks who loves him the most. Often what a character says, therefore, is quite different from what he means. You really need to understand subtext to get ahead in this show. The main points of conflict in the show are not big battles or car chases or even elaborate death scenes. Instead, most of the conflict comes from an ongoing and relentless series of misunderstanding and miscommunication. Misunderstanding drives the comedy.
He said it was just going to take a little longer.
But he said that to be nice. What I think he meant to say was that he wished that Mom gave birth to a can opener, because at least then it would be useful.
And it drives the drama. There's plenty of moments where characters don't understand the exact language game being played, and you can almost feel the power slipping from them as they fuck it up.
Dad, just tell them it's gonna be me.
A lot of Kendall cringe content, for example, and oh my god, is there a lot.
Come on, man, fuck off.
Comes from his sheer inability to read a room and understand what to say according to that. A good example of that is Kendall and Logan's dinner in Italy, where Kendall just can't for the life of him say anything that will help him get through to Logan. His inability to understand the language that his dad's speaking and speak accordingly is thrown into stark relief when Logan later has a conversation with Mattson. Mattson is speaking Logan's language here. He understands that Logan is never going to hand over the keys to Waystar unless he feels like he's going to be respected and honoured. So Mattson makes a point of reassuring Logan that he'll do just that. And even if it is the kind of bullshit that we usually see Logan himself pull, it does feel kind of believable. I think Logan does fall for it a little bit. But usually it's Logan who always has the upper hand because it was him who decided that these were the rules of the game. And even when people do adhere to the rhetorical strategy that he wants, he can just change the rules. One of the best examples of this is, of course, Boar on the floor.
Oink for your sausages, Piggy. Oink, oink.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Here, Logan literally plays a game with his employees and constantly changes the rules so no one can win.
But the rules are that you're spared if you tell the truth. Oh. And I just told you the truth.
Oh, there are rules.
There's a line.
There are no fucking rules. Nothing is a line. Everything, everywhere, is always moving. Forever.
That doesn't seem like a very good system.
Logan's rhetoric and the fact that he's in charge of the game gives his words so much power that he can just speak his will into reality.
Everyone just fucking agrees with you and believes you, so it becomes true, and then you can turn around and say like, oh, you see? See? I was right.
When it looks like they're going to get off lightly with the DOJ, Logan raises a toast to justice being served, even though he very well knows that the corporation is guilty of the crimes they're being accused of. Because in Succession, it doesn't matter what you do, it matters what you say you do, and that enough people believe the lie.
That's what people are saying. Who cares if it's true?
It's kind of a superpower, isn't it? If you can lie to someone like that.
And it's this game of constant lies that causes all the agony, right? The fact that the characters can never say what they actually mean means that they can never connect with each other on a genuine level. They're all forced into isolation or into messed up fake versions of connection. Succession, more like emotional repression, am I right?
Honesty is such a lonely word. Everyone is so untrue.
In this world, telling the truth has kind of been automatically rendered taboo. Telling the truth risks giving away leverage, so all true desires and feelings must be concealed and pushed down. This leaves the true motives and feelings of the characters to leak out in weird ways. Kendall surrounds himself with yes men to try and get the approval from his missing dad. Roman has issues. Shiv makes up for her lack of control in the family by bullying her husband Tom, and poor Tom makes up for the lack of control in his marriage by bullying Greg, often in a way that's freakishly reminiscent of the way that Logan bullies his kids.
You need a supermajority in the whole thing.
No, because I need a supermajority in the...
I don't recall, Your Honor. I don't recall. You're a fucking joke, man.
This is also a very Shakespearean thing about Succession, that the subplots mirror the dynamics in the main plot. All of this game playing and lying and repression is why it hits so hard when somebody tells the truth in Succession. It's such a sucker punch when the mask slips. Because we all know when they tell the truth, they stand to lose something. They're giving away power, potentially, but they're just in so much pain that they can't keep it in any longer.
I wonder if the sad I'd be without you would be less than the sad I get from being with you.
In these moments, the characters tend to use simplified language, not jargon, not rhetoric, just the truth. In the conclusion of King Lear, there's an appeal to let go of rhetoric and jargon, and instead to speak as we feel and not as we ought to say. It's quite a redemptive and hopeful thought, but by this point in the play, everything's too far gone. I mean, the kingdom's fucked and everyone's dead, so it's a little bit late for that. At one point in Succession, Roman makes a similar plea.
If we come through this, is there a thing where we, like, talk to each other about stuff? Normally.
But the idea is so foreign to them, all they can think to do is mock it.
You want to talk to each other normally?
Talk about the big shit?
Yeah, we can talk about the big shit.
We can talk about our feelings.
How am I the mature one here?
Even in the rare moments when the Roy siblings are able to connect, their love is not enough to conquer Logan.
Love? You talk about love?
Because even if they're able to break away from it, everyone around them is still playing Logan's twisted game of love. They've all gone so far down this tragic trajectory that all of their hopes for real connection are kind of bound to fail. It's the same tragic trajectory that King Lear sets into motion in the very first scene of the play, where he first sets out the rule that love is about being able to sound like you love someone more than it is about actually loving someone. It's a misunderstanding of what true connection is, of what true love is.
Love is it's like 28 different things. Fear and jealousy and revenge, control.
As the King of France warns in this very beginning scene, love's not love when mingled with regards that stand aloof from the entire point. And there it is. In succession, love is mingled with regards that stand aloof from the entire point. When the characters talk about love, they're often only able to do so by using corporate jargon.
It's good to know we don't have an unbalanced love portfolio.
Love just becomes another word that people say, and what are words?
Words are just, what? Nothing. Complicated airflow.
I love you.
What does it mean?
As the play King Lear progresses, being surrounded by all of these words that mean nothing causes Lear to become paranoid, unable to trust anyone and eventually even mad, even though he's the one that set the rules up for this game that they're all playing. Similarly, Logan's idea of love seems to drive him mad, even though he's the one who wrote the rulebook. In a way, Logan is almost in a worse state than King Lear, because at least in King Lear, Lear accepts the fact that he does need to give up his seat of power. He gives up power in the first scene, while Logan clings on to power desperately because it's truly all he has. In this sense, maybe a better Shakespearean comparison for Logan is not King Lear, but Titus Andronicus.
I'm gonna grind these fucking bones to make my bread.
There's this actor bloke who once played Titus who wrote, "Titus is a general, a warrior, a soldier, a trained killer trained to kill for Rome. His allegiance to Rome, has superseded any domestic, social or personal affiliations he may have had. Rome is the centre of his life." In Titus, continues this actor, "We witness a man who will be forced to pay for the price of the self-brutalization of his own nature. He is an arch-conservative who refuses to recognise that the role he was so passionately wedded to has atrophied and no longer exists. A wind of change is needed, but he refuses to acknowledge it. Hence his holding on to the idea of succession by primogeniture." I wonder which actor wrote all this.
L to the old G.
At the end of King Lear dies of grief when Cordelia, his daughter who he previously banished, dies in his arms. It's not exactly a happy ending, but at least there is some kind of moment where Lear feels the full grief of everything he's been through and everything he's put his children through, enough to kill him. It doesn't offer Lear himself any redemption, but at least it kind of leads to that thought at the end of speaking as we feel and not as we ought to say. I always wondered at the point that Logan died whether there might be a similar moment where he felt the grief that he'd put his kids through. But no, Logan went out with no admission of guilt, no brief understanding of the trauma he'd put his kids through, no hope for family reconciliation. He was just fighting and fighting for Waystar until the bitter end. There's never a moment where he stops and sees things differently. Sure, they had that chat in the karaoke bar, but I don't know how much of that was real. Logan has always seen business as a kind of war, so in a way he died at war. It's a lot more like Titus Andronicus in this sense, because Titus also got killed off in a bloody revenge battle. He never stopped for a second to feel the grief that he'd put his family through. That said, there is this lesson, as I mentioned, of speaking as we feel, not as we ought to say, after Lear dies in the play, so maybe after Logan's death there will be more hope for reconciliation between the kids. I don't know that for sure, because at the time of filming, I'm only up to the episode where Logan dies, nothing else has been released. If you want to know my thoughts on the final 7 episodes of season 4, then you're just gonna have to subscribe, baby.
These trust fund YouTube shits.
Well, thanks for watching, and wait a second, you didn't think I wasn't gonna talk about how much Succession slags off Shakespeare, did you?
Oh yeah, they all love fucking Shakespeare.
I land the deal, I kill Kendall, I'm crowned the king. Just like in Hamlet. If that happens in Hamlet, I don't care.
Would you like to hear my favorite passage from Shakespeare? Take the fucking money.
Just like Hamlet.
One of Logan's rare insecurities is that he isn't very highbrow. I think Logan basically hates anything that runs the risk of making him look inferior or less powerful. When the Roys go and visit the Pierce family in season 2 to try and acquire their company, the Pierces talk a lot about high culture.
We have started worshipping Shakespeare.
It's always people like the Pierces who bum off Shakespeare, isn't it? Old money, establishment poshos who use things like Shakespeare as a form of cultural capital to justify their place in the world. This is a bastardization of Shakespeare's legacy, and it really grinds my gears. Here, a knowledge of Shakespeare is used as a kind of class signifier, a badge of prestige, of authenticity, and somehow morality. Within this context, Shakespeare isn't a master of human emotion. His words are hollowed out to become just as meaningless as corporate jargon.
Good night, ladies. Good night. Sweet ladies.
A little further ado. In fact, much ado about something.
The Pierces definitely feel like they have the moral high ground over the Roys.
Those blue-blooded fucks.
And yeah, fair play to the Pierces for holding on to the idea that there's more in life than money, and that things like, you know, truth might exist and be a relevant thing to think about in the world of journalism. But they are a little bit...
I'm actually getting my second PhD right now.
I mean, they're just a little bit...
I like to have 3 novels and a memoir going at once.
Aren't they? I'm not saying I prefer Logan here, but a part of me did kind of root for him to get Pierce in that episode. When you see how smug, blue-blooded, born-into-money people can be, it really makes you root for literally anyone else, even if that anyone else is, in this case, a corrupt billionaire. I think that's another reason why so many people get drawn in by Logan. He's a monster, but he's not a snob. You couldn't really accuse Logan Roy of being pretentious. You could accuse him of corporate manslaughter, but at least he's never going to pronounce theatre, so, you know, swings and roundabouts. It's ironic that Shakespeare is seen as high art for snobs by so many people these days. Back in the days of Shakespeare, it was seen as art for everyone. I think part of what contributed to this snobbification of Shakespeare over the years is how difficult and inaccessible a lot of the language is to the modern ear. You can't be punched in the gut by Hamlet's to be or not to be speech unless you know what a bodkin is. If it was that easy, we'd all be reading Shakespeare all day instead of watching Succession. It's only really once Shakespeare went into print, and those folios were very expensive, followed by the Victorian era, which saw theatre as a kind of moral superiority class thing, that Shakespeare started to garner this reputation as high art. Shakespeare was the soap opera of its day, is something that English teachers like to say a lot, as if Shakespeare's writing could live up to the genius of EastEnders.
I didn't become a little bit of a slag. I became a total slag.
But there is something to the idea that theatre in Shakespeare's time was the media of the masses. And whilst many poshos did go to the Globe to watch Shakespeare, so did many little scum like you or I. According to an interview with Brian Cox, the Murdochs themselves have watched Succession, and so have you and I in our scummy little flats that their mates probably own. TV is truly one of the few mass mediums we have left. The characters in Succession might slag off Shakespeare, but they embody all of the best parts of Shakespeare. And in that way, perhaps the best successor of Shakespeare's legacy is Succession itself. Jesse Armstrong, you are a genius. Okay, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and if you like this, please send it to any of your fellow Succession nerd friends. These people are my people. And if you didn't enjoy it, then...
Why don't you take your library card and fuck off?